Today, Senate Republicans Richard Shelby and Kay Bailey Hutchison made a point of talking up the possibility that some Republicans might actually vote for Wall Street reform. Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa actually cast a vote in favor of Wall Street reform in a committee vote today. But as Republican opposition to Wall Street reform softens like cheese left in a sunbeam, don't think the fight is over. Wall Street reform is not just opposed by Republicans. It is also opposed by a huge anti-reform lobbying effort that's underway on the part of the financial industry. The financial industry, of course, does not want to be further regulated. Bailout necessitating financial crisis be darned. 6 top banks spent almost $7 million on lobbying in just the first quarter of this year. Add that to the $43 million spent by a handful of friendly special interest groups, and you've got a very well-funded effort to kill Wall Street reform. Justin Elliott over at Talking Points Memo did some great legwork today tracking down the origins of some of the opposition to Wall Street reform, some of the opposition that has looked like it was coming from the left. It's about this group, Stop Too Big to Fail. The group's responsible for a $1 million-plus anti-Wall Street reform ad buy, plus a series of anti-Wall Street reform postings on some liberal websites. The group's liberal credentials also used to include what looked like an endorsement on their website from the former chief economist of the IMF and MIT professor Simon Johnson, who does believe that Wall Street reform needs to do more to restrict the size of the biggest banks. Mr. Johnson's photo appeared on this website, this Stop Too Big to Fail website, after he participated in a conference call with the group. On that conference call, he explained his views about Wall Street reform. Now, Mr. Johnson's photo was finally removed from the website at Mr. Johnson's request, after he got word that this group was sponsoring a $1.6 million ad campaign to defeat Wall Street reform altogether, which is, needless to say, not at all what he's about. How did the folks at Stop Too Big to Fail get in touch with Simon Johnson to ask him to participate in this conference call thing in the first place? Well, a man named Oliver Wolf contacted him. Oliver Wolf apparently works for a company called DCI Group. In fact, we left a message for Oliver Wolf at his voicemail box at the DCI Group main number tonight. So far, no word back. But is the name DCI Group sort of ringing a bell for you somewhere? Does that sound familiar? If it is, it's because you probably watched this show. And because the DCI Group is famous for using corporate money to create the appearance of fake grassroots movements. Late last year, we noted on this show, they were busy doing PR for the anti-health reform AstroTurf organization, the Coalition to Protect Patients' Rights. They've operated a fake news website, which looked like a regular news site, but happened to be full of articles promoting the positions of DCI clients. 3 founding partners of DCI Group are veterans of R.J. Reynolds, where in the 1990s they cut their teeth on the whole not at all corporate-seeming corporate campaign thing by setting up supposedly grassroots smokers' rights groups. Smokers' rights groups that were really just run by the tobacco companies. Also, do you remember how DCI Group came up around the last Republican National Convention? Remember this? Remember the Burmese military dictatorship getting dragged into John McCain's big pile of political problems around the RNC? We covered that last time DCI reared its ugly head. We covered it with the help of some reporting by Newsweek's Michael Isikoff.
John McCain had selected the CEO of DCI Group, Doug Goodyear, to manage the Republican convention last year. I wrote a story shortly after that Doug Goodyear's firm, DCI Group, had previously represented on the Burmese military junta. They'd been hired after George Bush was elected to help burnish the Burmese junta's image, and they ran a public relations campaign talking about how they were cracking down on the drug trade and how some of the allegations against them were false. Now, of course, the Burmese junta was long known as one of the most authoritarian, anti-democratic regimes in the world, with one of the worst human rights records. It happened to be my story, rather unfortunate for Douglas Goodyear, because this was right after the 2008 cyclone in Burma, where the Burmese junta was keeping out NGOs and outside relief workers. So I think the timing forced Douglas Goodyear to resign shortly after the story came out.
DCI Group. These guys' whole reason for existing is to burnish the credentials of, say, the Burmese military junta, or to take corporate money and turn it into fake grassroots-looking campaigns. They did it for big tobacco and for the pharmaceutical industry. They did it for the Burmese military junta, which made it too embarrassing for the Republican National Convention to associate with them. They did it for corporations who didn't want health reform to pass, and they're doing it now, apparently, for corporations who don't want Wall Street reform to pass. That's who's behind the opposition to financial reform that is supposedly coming from the left. Don't believe it for a second. These guys are pros. Joining us now is Simon Johnson, the Ronald A. Kurtz Professor of Entrepreneurship at MIT's Sloan School of Management. He's also a contributing business editor at the Huffington Post, and he's author of the book 13 Bankers, The Wall Street Takeover and the Next Financial Meltdown. Simon Johnson, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
Let me ask you if I got all that right, first of all. Stop Too Big to Fail reached out to you. How did they lobby you to sort of be part of their group?
Well, I talk to a lot of people, Rachel, and there's a lot of support, as you know, across the spectrum for sensible financial reform and for strengthening the Dodd bill, actually. So part of what I do is talk to a lot of these people. We bring a lot of them on board through the Huffington Post, for example. And we don't always ask, perhaps, as carefully as we should, show us all your credentials, show us exactly who's backing you. We talk to people, and we make friends, and we try and bring people with us. And I thought this group sounded a little off when I first started interacting with them, but it wasn't until I got a little bit deeper into it, and it wasn't until I heard about the ads they were running and the positions they were taking. I called them up on Friday and said, I think you guys are confused. You're going in with the Republicans. And they gave me some, run around then, and then I heard about the ads they bought in Nevada and Missouri and some other places, and I realized that this is a big problem.
Do you think they targeted you in particular because they are trying to appear like they're coming from a progressive perspective in their opposition to Wall Street reform?
Yes, I absolutely do. It's clever. It's very well done, Rachel. And this is an important point. This is very sophisticated disinformation. I used to work in Russia for a long time, actually. And this is the kind of thing which you saw in Russia and in the Soviet Union. Very, very clever. So they call themselves Stop Too Big to Fail. And my position is exactly the position, for example, of Senator Sherrod Brown and Senator Ted Kaufman today. They unveiled a bill, as you know, on this. Very sensible. Put a size cap and a leverage cap on the biggest banks. Make them smaller as an additional piece of all the other regulatory reforms. So that's my view, and that's the Senator's views on what it would take to greatly reduce the risk associated with these banks that are too big to fail. But this group, calling itself Stop Too Big to Fail, is wrapping itself in some of the same appearances. Of course, when you actually see the TV ad, there's no mistaking. This is an anti-reform ad. This is a kill the bill ad. And we now understand this very clearly, and we will go after them most strenuously, I can assure you.
One of the tensions that happened among progressives on health reform was when the bill got watered down, when the bill became a not very progressive health reform bill compared to what it could have been. Some people did say kill the bill, and some people said no, stick with the bill and try to strengthen it as much as you can. Is that same sort of split happening among progressives now on Wall Street reform? Do you think there is a credible, not AstroTurf, not corporate front progressive movement to kill the Dodd bill, kill Wall Street reform because it's not progressive enough?
No, I don't think so. Certainly not yet. That's not what we're seeing. I think everyone we're working with who's legitimate says, look, we'll take what we can get now, and we should try and get as much as we can. And I think the Brown-Kaufman bill and their approach would actually be a stronger message to take to November. It'd be a much better winning proposition. And I have a piece coming out in the New York Times online tomorrow saying exactly that. So we've not given up on strengthening the bill. But I think our broad view is, look, take what you can get this time, and then we'll come back for more. If you think about regulating over-the-counter derivatives, and I know everyone's eyes glaze over as soon as you say that, fine. We'll get what we can take now, and we're going to come back for more, because we're not going to fix it sufficiently, I think, this time. The Dodd bill, though, is an improvement, and it's certainly not at all what the Republicans claim it is.
Simon Johnson, the Ronald A. Kurtz Professor of Entrepreneurship at the MIT Sloan School of Management, and until recently, the accidental, not at all intentional poster boy for an AstroTurf campaign to kill financial reform. Thank you for extricating yourself from these folks and being willing to talk to us about it tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.